with the Paramilitary 2. Sorry, I bumped the camera there. Just because the hole is bigger and it's fully exposed, whereas the Mini-Onslaught, it's smaller and it's actually partially obscured. But on the flip side, because it's so big, it makes for a really wide point right here, which will affect how it kind of carries in the pocket. You can see how much more. You know, the thickness is, or the width of the closed blade is pretty much the same everywhere except on the Paramilitary 2. You can see how it humps out right here, just due to that extra hole there. So, you know, I haven't really ran into any problems with this. When I first started playing with it, I felt like, you know, I wasn't able to get into it very well, but once you get used to it, you just know you've got to kind of press here like a button and dig into it. But I would have to give the advantage to the Paramilitary 2 in terms of easy deployment. We kind of talked about cutting ability, but you know, this one's a little thinner, but they're both pretty thin here behind the edge. Well, actually, really when you get down to it, they're pretty much worlds apart. This one actually is quite a bit thicker up here at the edge. This one gets very razor thin. So, you know, obviously higher probability of chipping and things like that just due to how thin it is, but you're going to get much more slicing ability on the Onslaught. Next up, let's talk just overall strength and construction. You know, this would be hard. I mean, this would come down to the wire. I would kind of lean towards the Onslaught. It just seems like the pivot is a little bit beefier, and then you just have more body screws holding everything together. You've got the stop pin screws here, which act as a standoff, and then 3 body screws here. Paramilitary 2, you've really only got 2 body screws, and then you've got with standoffs, and then you've got the lanyard hole. But you know, I mean, it does somewhat stabilize it and add strength, but it's not really designed to do that all that well. So I'd have to give that to the Benchmade Onslaught just as far as overall sturdiness. Lanyard hole, teeny tiny lanyard hole. I don't care. I don't use lanyards. I've wanted to. I've tried them, but I don't like extra stuff hanging out in my pocket. But for those that do, obviously gigantic lanyard hole on here. You can get 550 ungutted cord, 2-3 strands through that thing. Whereas this one, you know, you're going to struggle to get one piece of gutted cord through it. This one actually has a tube that you would need to go through, whereas this one you can go through both scales or just one if that's what you want to do. Let's talk field maintenance. You know, I hate taking these scenarios like I certainly am not out in the field, you know, needing to take apart my knife, but I think it's something to consider. I've taken apart both of these. In fact, you've probably seen my video, my fail video, where I take this one apart. Basically, no and sure. If you have the tools to do it, you could take this apart pretty much anywhere. You know, as long as you got a nice little space to work, you're fine. This one, I would not recommend it. I could, you know, it took me a while, and there was nothing obscuring me. My hands were clean. I had a bright light. I was able to keep all the pieces all together and things like that. There's a lot of little parts in this knife. You know, you'll start taking it apart and things are just like ching 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 falling on your desk. But more than that, the way this axis lock works in this knife, it's very tricky to take apart and get back together. And, you know, unless you've got 3 arms or special machinery, you're going to be doing some very precise things. You know, basically, if you didn't see the video where I took it apart, you basically got to get these 2 liners together. But the problem is, the only thing holding these posts together and the interior posts from just sliding through the holes is the scales. But you can't put the scales on because you've got to slide this through the axis lock, because the only way to move this through, you have to have the scales off, if that makes sense, because it actually comes through here. So you got to come through here, screw the standoff on, get the axis lock in, put your springs in, and then you can put your scale on, and then slide your standoffs, well, your posts through, slide your standoffs through, put the posts through without letting them fall through, screw them on. Once you get one side in, you're good. You can worry about the next side later. And then you've got to actually take the blade and put your pivot partially through, put your washer on, you know, sliding it through, getting it perfectly on there, slide your blade through, slide the other washer on. That's the only way I could figure it out. There may be an easier way to do it. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So very complicated. This one, simple. You know, you just take it apart like any other knife. You know, undo the body screws, take off the scale, washer, blade, and then you just put it back, washer, blade. And along those same lines, the locking mechanism on this knife is far simpler. There's no springs or wires. There's no complicated bar that has to be put in through the liners a specific way. It's basically just a reverse liner lock. So really easy to do. Simple maintenance. If you needed to fix it, you know, there's not a whole lot that can break in there. Whereas here, you know, you may run into some issues if your spring breaks at a bad time or something like that. You could have a problem. Just something worth talking about. As far as lock strength, you know, I'd call it a wash. They're both very strong. Maybe the axis lock is stronger if I had to lean towards one way, just based on my testing and other testing I've seen. But I don't know. They're both more than adequate for what this knife needs to do. So, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is these are both awesome knives. If I had to pick one, just in terms of its features and functionality, I would have to go with the Paramilitary 2. I just think it's a much simpler design. It's easier to use, take apart, open, etc. Plus it's a little bit cheaper. However, if you're going for style points, you would have to go to the Mini-Onslaught. The Mini-Onslaught looks nicer, better fit and finish. It has things like these machine contour scales here, and the axis lock is a dream to use. You know, it's super smooth, locks up super tight. You know, just like this compression lock, you can undo it with one hand. You don't have to get your finger in front of the blade. Some people have a problem with this compression lock pinching them when they open it. You don't have that problem with this. It's more refined. I mean, you can see, look at the domed pivot right there. It's a much nicer, more finished looking knife. These are blue standoffs, but the regular version doesn't come with that. So yeah, so that's that. Both great knives. I would have to say that the overall design and function points have to go to the Parrot 2. But as far as which one looks nicer and which one will draw more attention when you pull out of your pocket, you would have to go to the Benchmade Mini-Onslaught here. Alright guys, I hope that maybe was entertaining or will help you decide if you're thinking about getting one of these two knives. They are pretty similar in a lot of ways for what you would use them for. They're both great, like I said. It just comes down to which attributes you hold more near and dear than others. Alright guys, take it easy. I'm out of here.